Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, don't call it a comeback. Call it the biggest comeback ever.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to have you along for the ride once again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Always appreciate being your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts each weekday. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more with FanDuel Sportsbook by visiting FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Today, to get started, we are coming to you on the heels of a Big 12 basketball win. For our team, Texas Tech, Chris, not only does not lose by 34 points to Iowa State again, they actually pull off the improbable and get a win, and they just doubled down on giving you your money's worth because they made it probably as entertaining as it could be. Took them to overtime, and at the end of the night, Chris, you not only had a win, but you had your biggest comeback in the history of the program, knocking down a mark that has stood since, I believe, 1997. You just said before we came on air, yeah, let's try and make sense of this. I don't know if we can, because that was one of the wildest things I've seen play out on a basketball floor. How about you?
I don't know what is more bizarre right now, what went on in that building versus Iowa State, or what's going on at the Dallas Zoo right now with all those animals. Yeah, I mean, like, got monkeys and leopards getting out, like spaced out.
Lemurs and leopards and vultures dying, turkeys kidnapped.
Yeah, it's like, but yeah, we're
check out that show, Locked On Dallas Zoo, another great show on the network.
Weirdest night I've experienced in that building, from the standpoint of it wasn't like a good game. It was just weird.
No.
Like, I'm trying to make sense of it. It's like, I mean, part of me is thinking, like, was somebody on Iowa State's team trying to shave points? Were you just playing possum for 30 minutes? Were you? I mean, I don't have any idea what the heck is because Iowa State just fell apart, and you were dead in the water. You were. I mean, they were making everything. The one guy you couldn't let shoot it, Caleb Grill, got 9 shots early on. He makes 8 of the 9, and it's like you got to try to stop the one guy. Just don't let him shoot it. And then he just got the layups. Just, hey, come on, yeah, come make a layup. There's not going to be any resistance here. I think points in the paint at one point in that game were 30-12 in favor of Iowa State. Mm. And then it all wasn't, and then it Grill doesn't make anymore, and then it's no free layups, and then it's just Iowa State's just like, hey, if you want the ball, just take it, man. I don't really want it, and I just, it's just bizarre. And here's the craziest thing that I was trying to process. We look at typically, you always do, Vegas. So the night before the game, Iowa State's a 1.5 favorite. I always like to look at this just to kind of feel for, okay, what do the folks in Nevada think? What's kind of expected to happen? Whatever with the the Tech and the game that they're involved in, and around the league as well. You kind of give a fairly good idea of things. And so Iowa State 1.5 didn't really surprise me. And then by tip-off, though, Texas Tech is a 2.5-point favorite. And so I'm thinking, okay, if you've taken Texas Tech and then the score is 59-36, I mean, you've torn your ticket up. You've, like, MF'd everybody. You're just done. Like, I've had it. And then you're like the guy over there going, does anybody have any tape? Can I piece this thing together and tape it back and turn it in? I mean, and you end up winning by half a point if that's what you had. So I was just, the whole thing is the
amazing,
most bizarre thing I had seen in a long time. Sports, man. I mean,
Yeah.
I got no explanation for it.
Yeah, how many times at the end of the night do you say, hey, Vegas knows, and I thought yesterday this isn't going to be one of those times, but I will be damned. I will be damned. They knew. Again, I don't know, I've been racking my brain since it happened to think of another just wild turn of events like what we saw there, because you're right. It wasn't like it was some competitive game, all the way through. These teams really battled out. No, it was like Iowa State was smacking you around, and then all of a sudden they said, you know what? We'd like a few smacks. Thank you, sir. May I have another? They went full Kevin Bacon in their underwear by the end of the second half. I've never seen such a transition.
We're tired of playing good basketball. Okay, we're just tired of playing good basketball. I mean, we are exhausted. We feel like we've done it for 30 minutes. Hey, your turn. Your turn to do it. I mean,
last place versus first place. There's so many different contexts to this that just spin it in a wild direction.
You can't win close games. You can't finish games. This one you couldn't really start. So it's like the roles were reversed. I mean, you were all about the finish in this one. You just couldn't start it, or the meat in the old sandwich sucked. I'm just, and here is the basketball part. Here's the interesting.
Okay, let's get to that.
Yeah, is I felt like you maybe had found something versus LSU. And what I mean by that is Kerwin Walton, 5 of 6 from 3, goes for 17 points, kind of plays to what you had needed from him, okay? Provides some scoring, does some different things. Elijah Fisher, off the bench, 9 rebounds, 5 points, couple of steals, a block shot, okay? Maybe you found something. You've got some minutes, some quality minutes off the bench. And these two guys aren't really a part of any of this. I mean, they're not a part of any of it. So, I got nothing, man. It was the damnedest thing I've ever seen. And I mean, this one will haunt TJ Otzelberger's team. I mean, this is one they absolutely let get away. And this is why Kansas wins the Big 12 most years, because they don't lose games like this. That they come into Lubbock, and as we saw, I didn't agree with the way that game was officiated down the stretch, but they figure out a way to win that game. Iowa State couldn't do it, and you're up 23. But you look up the foul count a bit lopsided, free throw attempts a bit lopsided. Iowa State though missed 9 free throws in this game. They turned it over 17 times. Okay, and it was Grill and Kalsher and Lipsy, their stud 3 guards, their primary ball handlers, they turn it over 12 times of the 17, 4 each. So I can't feel sorry for them. They screwed this up. There's no, we got hosed by a call or any of that. No, you just, Texas Tech just got you, man. I mean, and 12 and change or maybe 10 minutes to go. Hacks asked me on the broadcast, you think they got a run in them? I'm like, well, I mean, you better, and so you better start right now, because it's a lot of points and not much time left. But what Mark Adams did that really changed the game, or Al Pinkins or whoever's idea it was, is that they decided to go small ball. You had Kevin Obanor at the 5, and it just kind of freaked Iowa State out, and they had a hard time matching up with it. And they're not the deepest team. They have a freshman point guard, but we didn't see Bacho the last 10 to 12 minutes. You didn't see Robert Jennings. You didn't see KJ Allen. And it was strictly Obanor, and then you just kind of shuffled the guards in and out. And it really gave Iowa State a lot of problems. But you shuffled the guards in and out, but there was no Walton or Fisher a part of it. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good. I was going to ask you about Bacho. I'm glad you brought that up, because I was kind of wondering, was that hand forced to have to go smaller? What was the deal with Bacho? Was there like a new injury or re-aggravating something, or was it just a decision from the coaching staff to go that route? But first, today's episode brought to you by America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, that's even better, because I've got so many great features to make your betting experience fun and easy, even if you're a beginner. New customers can join today and get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/locked-on. So that's a free $150 in free bets when you place your first $5 bet by going to FanDuel.com/locked-on. They've got all your favorite bets from the money line to point spreads, player props, and all points in between. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. You know what that's about. All on an app that's safe, secure, super easy to use. So don't miss out. Football fan, basketball fan, whatever fan. Place your first $5 bet today to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/locked-on. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on, and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. What was the deal with Bacho? Was there like a new injury or re-aggravating something, or was it just a decision from the coaching staff to go that route?
I think it was however we want to phrase this, but I think that they had elected this is how we have a best chance to get back in this game, but also they could help that decision because Bacho's knee was bothering him, and I think that Mark Adams talked about that after the game, that his knee was kind of tightened up. The kid just hadn't been right, man. And it's just when he's, I think against LSU, he looked like he was there with a purpose. And, in this game, it just like he just didn't play well and didn't have it. And I think that, we point to them as college athletes. We think about how the way that things used to be and people were tougher, and you hear all this load management stuff. It's hard though playing on a Saturday and turn around and playing on a Monday. Because I think you saw with Iowa State. I think you saw them feeling it too, because they in Columbia, Missouri on a Friday. They play on Saturday. They lose, short trip home, but then they've got to come home, do laundry, whatever it is. And then you're up on Sunday morning and you're on the plane again, coming to Lubbock and then playing Monday night.
Quick trip to Lubbock, just a quick Ames to Lubbock jaunt.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, but I just think Bacho had to play a lot of minutes. So I don't know if that knee was flaring up, but he's still not gained all the weight back. And he's still got, I think there's a break in there maybe on that hand or severe dislocation. So anyways, but there's that deal, but yeah, you went without your bigs really, and Kevin Obanor just stepped up, and he was a monster. So I don't know where we go from here. I still can't believe what I saw. This is a kind of game though that affects the top end of the conference race, and it obviously means that you are not going to go winless in the Big 12. Again, none of it made any sense whatsoever.
Woo. And I don't care where we go from here, to be honest with you, because we don't have to go anywhere until Saturday. So we got a few days as Tech fans. Not sure the team can do this, but as fans, we got a few days to enjoy this one. It was almost like a foreign feeling, Chris. I'm like, oh yeah, this is the winning feeling right here. And not just the winning feeling, all the other things we've described so far. I get the point that you're making about the recipe for success against LSU. Really featured some atypical involvement or production from Kerwin Walton and Elijah Fisher. But I do feel like Fisher, for his 14 minutes compared to other 14-minute sets this year, was fairly impactful. I didn't feel like he had a bad game. In your bench overall, that's the bigger point. He was a part of a bench that outscored the opposition, I believe, 24-8. And nobody was, really flashing in some huge way, Chris, but you got some production from almost everyone that got significant minutes. And that's really all I think you've been asking for throughout the year. It's not like, hey, Damarian Williams, you got to go score 17 or 18 like you did that one time, or even Kerwin Walton, hey, 17, 18, let's get 20 out there every night. It'd be great. You'd be a really good team if that was the case. But you just wanted something. And, God, I don't know if we'll get it like that again, Chris, but you saw Fisher, Jennings, Williams, Washington, Allen to a lesser extent, but you saw the bench really contribute, and I'll be damned. I would almost say that's the first time this season I've seen the bench kind of across the board give you a little something from those reserves.
Well, like it was, and at some points you understand these kids are kind of growing up a little bit. I think it's hard to
Yeah.
measure it just because the competition is just so difficult, and it's going to be that way from here on out. But Lamar Washington, Robert Jenningses, they have gotten better over the course of. I mean, think about how different they are as players right now as we're about to get into February compared to what it was at the 1st of November or 1st of December. I mean, they are they're much different. It's not perfect. It's not a finished product by any means, but you get 14 combined from those two freshmen. And you mentioned the bench scoring 24-8. I mean, they provide the bulk of that, and you needed every one of them. And they're,
Yes.
Robert Jennings was more early in the game. Lamar Washington's was actually more late. If you look into that plus minus stat, which is a bit tricky, I don't think it always tells the whole story with players. I think it's an interesting data point. But Lamar Washington's a plus 18. And what that is that means that's the way the game was played whenever he was on the floor. There's so much factored into that, but it's an interesting tell on certain guys. But he had the best plus minus of anybody on the floor. And I just thought so here's what they had not done a lot of to this point in the season. And I think you'll see more of it now, and that's playing Davion Harmon and Lamar Washington together. Because
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, and it's tricky because neither one of them is a perimeter threat. They can both hit jumpers, but they're just not – that's not what you think of. But they're both plus defenders. They are both, I think, tough and do some different things. They're not afraid to drive, and, they're just not going to hit jump shots for the most part. They can, but I thought that's kind of part of what changed this game a little bit. Again, Iowa State just had a hard time, and we're sitting here talking about these freshmen. Iowa State has a freshman point guard too, in Tamin Lipsey, and he's been really good. I praised him in the broadcast last night before the game even got going because he's been like an unsung hero for Iowa State because he wasn't supposed to be their point guard. They had a kid that transferred in from Temple that was supposed to be the starting point guard and is a really good player and is out for the season. So here this freshman kid gets handed the keys and it's like, and so he doesn't score a lot, does Lipsey. But last night he got rattled. He looked like a freshman on the road in the Big 12. And it's hard. The league is tough. I mean, Iowa State got a dose of that too. Because, I mean, here was the similar thing. It was 39-20 at halftime in Ames in favor of Iowa State. It was 39-22 at halftime here in Lubbock in favor of Iowa State. I mean, we were watching the same game over again. And then you look up, it's 59-36, and we know what happened in Ames when they just ran off. And I thought they're just better than you. They are executing. This is good players, better team. And you're just kind of overwhelmed, and yet then with about 10 minutes to go, the script writers from Hollywood swoop in and go, you know what, let's change the ending here. And that's they went on coffee break, and a hobo walked by and said, "Hey guys, you like some mushrooms?" And I thought, why not? We got to finish this script. And then all of a sudden, the room was upside down when they 17-2 run. You go on a 17-2 run.
Insane.
Yeah. No sense.
Insane. Outscored by 17 in the first half. You outscore them by 17 in the second half, and then by 3 in OT. I thought it really spoke to what Tech was doing as a team, battling-wise, as it relates to the number of free throw attempts. They got 37 on that night. They knocked down 26 of them. Still not anything to write home about as far as taking advantage of those 37 opportunities. But if you're only going to make 70%, try and shoot 40 or 50, I guess, is a good approach. And Chris, take your pick, man. Obanor, Harmon, Jalen Tyson at a certain point. These are guys who are dropping marbles on the table. And I was thinking about Tyson when you mentioned, talking about on the broadcast, do they have a run in them? I'm not sure they would if Jalen Tyson for a period of time didn't have a run in him. It seemed like he was one singular Red Raider at one point that was a little pissed off maybe and was not liking the way that game was going. And he did something about it. I was really impressed with all three of those guys, but kind of felt like the script flipping kind of began with Jalen Tyson a little bit.
Yeah, Calvin, I think they started to press a bit. You started to pressure him in the full court, and you had Jalen Tyson at the front of that. And I thought he started to generate some steals, some runouts, and his length and athleticism. Look, nobody questions Jalen Tyson's talent at times. It's just sometimes he gets, I don't know if it's out of control or if it gets too. We know he can rebound, right? And he does it on this night. I think he has 9 boards. Am I seeing that right? Yeah, he's got 9 rebounds. Yeah. But then there's the nights where he gets none or one and so you just need more consistency, which is the hardest part. We've talked about this, but I thought he was certainly a catalyst. Yeah, because you didn't get it from Kerwin Walton or Elijah Fisher or. Yeah. And I thought, the 4 steals by Jalen Tyson certainly, but Obanor played to what he's needed to be all season. And I know he said after the game was over, hey, we're going to the tournament. That's a fact. You can book it. I would just we got a long way to go here. I thought, but his because here's the craziest thing, and Obanor was a part of this. I think Lamar was, Jalen Tyson was. Like to pull off a comeback, so much has to go right, and too often you make a run, but then you look up at the end of the game and you can't quite have gotten over the hump, and you say that's why you just can't afford to get down by 23 or 17 or whatever the number was, because it's just right. It's just too hard. And how many times down the stretch did they split at the free throw line? Obanor did it, Lamar Washington did it, Jalen Tyson did it. So that's the craziest thing, is that you still pulled this off even though you didn't take full advantage of your opportunities at the free throw line. But I just thought Obanor on the glass, he hit a monster 3 from the corner. I just thought he kind of stepped up when you just desperately needed it. And, without him, we're probably having a different conversation. But I thought, and again, he played all the bigs minutes in the basically the entire second half, and did so without fouling. And
that's what I was going to say. You're battling on the glass. You competed rebounding wise. There are some sequences that were incredibly frustrating from an offensive rebounding standpoint for Iowa State, but really on the night, statistically, it wasn't, your worst day. But you're doing that with Bacho essentially a non-factor, Amax in a jogging suit, Pop Isaacs is in a jogging. It's just so wild that you pull this off on the night that you did, Chris. But I'd like to wrap it up with Davion Harmon, because I thought he was just relentless and kind of was in a zone of not being denied as it relates to getting to the rim as the game went on. I appreciated his emotion in the post-game press conference, defending his team, defending his coach, care factor 10 of 10. You can see it matters to the guy. And also 5 assists, 1 turnover against Iowa State. I think his last 2 games now, he's like 11-3 as far as assist to turnover ratio. So with some time, maybe the dude is figuring out how he fits in with this team. But regardless, the tenacity last night to just get to the freaking rim and see what happens, I love to see from Davion Harmon.
Yeah, at some level, he's 5 of 17 from the field. He's 0 for 4 from behind the arc. Okay, so just a not very efficient. However, what you're talking about is just monster cojones at the end of the game, when he just gets into the lane and he's kind of dribbling, and you can sense the urgency in the crowd. Okay, do something. The shot clock is. And then he gets into the lane and he just kind of uses his leverage and, kind of gets near the bucket, and he just kind of throws one up and they go in. He did it a couple of times. And at a point when you just, okay, it's like it's going to make or break right here, and you had to have it. And he gave it to you. He repeatedly got to the free throw line. I think he was 6 of 8 there. But, yeah, he's got a great personality, heart of gold. Everybody will tell you that. And I thought his emotion was – I wasn't expecting that from him after the game. I thought, I think it's real with him. I think that he's got, he's taken all this hard. And again, when you're the point guard, it's like being the quarterback. You're going to get a lot of credit, a lot of criticism, most of it undeserved in both cases, but that's just the way it goes. And when you have the ball in your hands in either sport, most of the time, more so than anybody else, the criticism or the praise kind of comes with the territory. But I thought, it was deserving that Obanor and Harmon were the ones speaking on behalf of their team after the game versus Iowa State. But yeah, man, I just damnedest thing I've ever seen. I mean, really, I cannot, I can't even. You were dead in the water. You had the crowd is leaving. It wasn't a big crowd anyway. You're down 23. It just made no sense. And just slowly but surely, in the span of about 10 or 11 minutes, it just kind of you chipped away. And so, this was.
You know how I was thinking about at the end of the game, Chris?
Glenn Mason, who got fired from Minnesota after Mike Leach did the same thing to him.
The other guy. I was thinking about Mike Leach. I'm like, what kind of comeback is this?
Swing your sword.
It reminds you of so many of those football days where you're like, how did we wind up winning this game again? Because it's not like you do anything particularly well. Yeah, you just keep battling. And
I'm trying to remember who the player that said it. There's an NFL Films. I'm a big NFL Films guy. I love the way the access and the stuff that they did it. And it was like maybe it was like Joe Montana. It was one of these old school quarterbacks. And you can hear, and this is so back in the 80s, 90s, and he's just going up and down the sideline, and he just keeps telling his guys, just keep playing, which – sometimes for kids and coaches, it's hard to do. For fans to kind of pay attention to the watch, just keep playing. But it's like, you keep going until they tell you there's no time left. You keep going until, because I did see this too, which is just wild. This is the first one of the Power Five, but this is the third game in the last 72 hours in college basketball where you've had a 23-point comeback. Third one, 72 hours.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, I think like Western Kentucky was featured in one. So this was the most high profile one, but no, it just no lead is safe sometimes. People are too skilled with the shot making. Because in the NBA, this is every night. And this is every night in the NBA. Like everybody makes a run. Being up 40 and then losing it wouldn't just, lead off the news just because other team, they have dudes that can make shots from everywhere and a bunch of them in a row. That's just every team. But in college, this is a bit tricky. There's not as much time. How is it called? Whatever. And I just still have a hard time processing it. I wish I have done better here, but I'm just kind of at a loss here. And I know it's our job to kind of explain it, but yeah, good luck, people. You're on your own here.
Texas Tech basketball still best enjoyed with a stiff drink. Celebratory in this instance. Thank God. I was tired of crying in my whiskey every time out. We'll see if they can do anything with it. Got a few days to prepare for a big challenge, to say the least, as you hit the road to take on the Baylor Bears for a nationally televised matchup Saturday afternoon. So plenty of time to think about that one, and we'll have plenty of time to discuss it with you here this week on Locked On Texas Tech. To wrap up today's episode, don't know when you're going to be listening to this, but if you're listening to it sometime roughly prior to 1 o'clock on Tuesday, then you haven't seen the Big 12 football schedule yet, but you've seen, well, back to what Chris said, a zoo-like atmosphere, leopards, monkeys, leaked schedules, Tech playing a game on a Thursday night. What do we know so far before we've gotten the full picture? We'll get to that coming up next on Locked On Texas Tech. Thanks for joining us on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Always great to be your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts with Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan coming to you from west of the 100th meridian, where it's really going down. It's a beautiful day in the great state when you do what you done at United Supermarkets Arena last time around. And as I mentioned a moment ago, we'll get back to Tech Hoops this week, getting ready for Red Raiders and Bears coming up this weekend. But we have painfully, agonizingly been preparing to see a Big 12 football schedule, Chris. And this is classic Big 12 to roll it out this week. We told you on yesterday's show, hey, like probably within 12 to 24 to 48 hours, something like that, depending on when you were listening to that show, you're going to get a Big 12 football schedule. We thought it could have been Monday. It was not Monday, but the Big 12 does announce on Monday, hey, you're going to get it at 1 o'clock on Tuesday. And then that's when the fun really began, because folks in Fort Worth, as it relates to Texas Christian, and then eventually, I guess, some folks in Norman, Oklahoma, as it relates to the Oklahoma Sooners, are putting schedules out there for some reason, probably mistaken, on websites and whatever. And so we begin to glean some things from what was released by those. Chris, and I guess we'll just start with this simply, because we can only talk about what we know. We don't know what the schedule is going to be yet. You may listen to this after you've seen it, if you're on the other side of that timeline. But as we're having this conversation, we don't know the full picture yet. But it does sound like, based on these leaks, Chris, you were correct in what you've been saying for a while now, that Texas Tech was not likely to appear on Oklahoma's schedule. And we got some new piece of information that's not going down all that smoothly for me as a Tech fan. The Red Raiders and the Horned Frogs, Thursday, November 2nd, from Jones Stadium in Lubbock. Let's start with those two tidbits. Either way you want to go, both really interesting for different reasons.
Yeah, what's the irony is the way you led into this conversation was, mentioned in the United Supermarkets Arena and then the football schedule. I get a text in the middle of the basketball game, and it's like, man, I can't wait that the football schedule's coming out. It's going to pass the time because this basketball team is really, really struggling. And I'm thinking I get all kinds of text messages during games at times from people that are either angry or excited or emotional, and I just thought, yeah. Go figure.
Do something, Chris. Yeah,
that's right. Because the Red Raiders would go on to win that one. Who knew? So I think what one of the theories out there has been about Oklahoma is that they didn't want to or care for playing any of the new teams. I don't know what's true and what's not there. Okay, so I'm clear. But I think that it's interesting to note that they're Oklahoma, if this schedule that's out there is to be believed, they're not going to play Texas Tech, Kansas State, or Baylor. And in some ways you say, golly, because that's – I mean, Kansas State and Texas Tech are going to be two of the teams predicted to be really, really good next year. And so they dodge a big-time bullet. However, if they really didn't want to play any of the new guys, I think they're pretty much going to play all of them. So that's
hope so.
Yeah, that's interesting to note. And
it stands to reason, Chris. I don't think you're just out there on a real thin limb thinking that Oklahoma would be, or Texas, be trying to throw it around and saying we don't want to play Cincinnati. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, that's true.
I think I could buy it.
and then the Thursday, I that's why I kept mentioning that's what you want to look for is like the weird the oddities in the schedule, like the off nights, the Thursdays, the early conference game. When does the bye week come? And really, in one little reveal on accident, I guess, by TCU, you're going to find out that when because you won't play multiple, you'll play, you are going to be featured on a Thursday night. It's going to be at home, which is tricky. We can get into that in a later show, I guess. And then that also is going to tell you when your bye week is, because it's going to be the weekend before. They're not going to make you play on a short week. They're going to give you extra rest. I think that's part of the contract or part of the deal. But you're going to host TCU, which right now, as we look at it way, way, way ahead of time, that could be one of the featured matchups at the tail end of the season. Have any idea what these two teams will do between now and then once the season starts. But as you look at it way ahead of time, these two teams could be preseason top 25. These two teams could have some expectations on them, and on it goes. and you will host them on a Thursday night, and on November the 2nd, I think is what you told me, Cowan. And so that means what, right? The right around Halloween or whatever, that weekend right before is when you would be off. TCU would be as well. That would be when their bye week will be. So, and so in a weird way, you kind of get there's the bad part is that you got to play on Thursday night at home. It's tricky to get the big crowd, and the people from out of town can't get here. Your students and parking is a mess. It's just kind of a quirky deal. However, from the positive from it is you kind of squeeze a lot of rest in there in the middle of a season for your team, because you're going to play like one game in a span of like 20 something days. Okay. So that is like, you really get a squeeze as much out of a bye week as you possibly can. So you kind of almost get like 1.5 or 2 bye weeks, if that makes sense, the way that the way it works. So anyway, but that's what we can tell you.
Well, I don't really have any concerns about the crowd. I'm sure you'll be able to, especially if it's a relevant game, you're going to pack it out. The problem is Texas Christian now is supposed to be one of your premier games on your schedule. I'm supposed to hate them and stuff, and we play for a trophy, which I think is cool. I like doing that, but Texas Christian fans don't even really love or hate anyone. There's not enough of them to generate that, so it's hard for us to really get it going, but I'm trying, all right? I'm trying in the new Big 12. I want the full fandangle. I want all Saturday to get lathered up for a game like that, Chris. I really don't worry about the attendance number. I think you had like 59,000 Thursday night against Texas Christian 10 years ago or so. Whenever Gary Patterson and Cliff Kingsbury tangled, you got a 20-10 win, I think, over a ranked one frog team. We saw about 15 quarterbacks play for Tech that day.
Shout out to Davis Webb, to Bradley Marquez.
That's right.
I think. Yeah, I'm going to roll with that. Yeah.
You'll have a party there. I really don't have any doubt about that. But you know what I'm saying? And I know that it's not guaranteed, like, hey, you get some. No, man, it's not a Saturday, college football Saturday in the fall in West Texas. So I don't like that. I love the little bonus kind of extended week you get there in the middle or late part of the season. I just wish the opponent was another one that wasn't supposed to be one of the bigger games on your home schedule. Like, give me UCF or whoever coming to town on Thursday, and I'm probably going to feel differently about it. But them's the breaks, and we don't know what other breaks are to come just yet. So be sure to be back here with us tomorrow as the fat woman finally comes out of the Big 12 birthday cake, and we get the full schedule. So we'll break down the full picture with you coming up tomorrow. But as we have the conversation, those are the things that seem to be reality right now based on these real things from Norman, Oklahoma and Fort Worth. So we'll see what else there is to be gleaned and cover it all with you on the next episode of Locked On Texas Tech. Should we go just for another half hour or so, because this is a winning conference basketball episode, Chris? I mean, it was kind of fun. I hate to let go of it. I feel like Rose letting go of Jack right now. I should keep the show on the door. Let's hang out longer. You want to just go get a cup of coffee or something and talk more about this?
That great analogy right there. Shout out to Titanic, man. Yeah, that's good stuff. Rose, she just shoved him off, and he was frozen and just off into the blue yonder. Leo just went to the bottom of the ocean right there.
Life of privilege, Rose Gator. A real witch.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I mean, we could keep.
Do you even remember what show we're on now that I've got you thinking?
Yeah, I'm still. I haven't had much sleep. It's just like, it's the whole thing is just a blur. So I don't know. Hopefully, we'll kind of, after we get hit the reset button, we'll come back and talk about some more football schedule stuff and this basketball team, I guess, as the week goes along. But still can't believe it.
It was an amazing night from United Supermarkets Arena. It would be even more amazing if they could do something with it. I didn't hear that Kevin Obanor comment, by the way, that they're going to the tournament, mark it down, write it down, take a picture. I don't give a what. So that's interesting. And I assume he's talking NCAA tournament, or is it like a midget wrestling tournament? Or
I think he meant the NCAA tournament. Yeah.
He meant the NCAA.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to the tournament. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It was in the post-game press
conference. He's basically telling us, Chris, keep hope alive, right?
Yes, he is. And it was in the United Supermarkets Arena, man. And again, at times it's not a strategy, but keep hope alive, people. You just never know, even when you're 23 down.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Today could be the day that features the biggest comeback of your life.
Yes.
A journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. Shout out to Rick Cooper. He's probably telling them that in the huddle last night when they're down 24. And I just thought that was a basketball camp message to justify charging you for the free T-shirt. What do I know? That's why I'm sitting there. They're sitting there. All right, Chris, enjoyed it, my man. Hope we have another one of these to discuss like this in the future. Let's go for 2 now in the Big 12 conference. Either way, dead ahead, we'll be back talking Big 12 football schedule. I know that on the other side, so be here for it. Subscribe on YouTube so you never miss an episode, or find Locked On Texas Tech for your first listen anywhere you get podcasts. We hope for your second listen, you'll check out Locked On College Basketball, the one-stop college hoops shop on the Locked On Podcast Network. That's Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. All right, thanks, Chris. For Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan, and thank you for joining us again. We'll see you for the next one on Locked On Texas Tech.